Okay, back with Jana Jones. The Art of the Matter is a script that we're talking about. I'm very familiar with your script because we did a whole Zoom reading with it about a year ago, I guess, correct?
I think it was a year ago.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun and it was very inspiring and also helpful. So, and I made a lot of changes as a result of doing that. So, it is inspiring because I felt like it meant something to some of the actors, you know. The two leads to have a script like that because the two main characters are older
Mhm.
and for them to have to have that kind of script for their age group, it seemed to mean something to them,
Yeah.
particularly them. And so that was kind of my intention. It was my intention. And so that was inspiring. But I also and also for some of the native indigenous characters, that means I wanted to write a script where there were native characters, but that they were native wasn't the point in the
Yeah. Yeah,
script.
sure. I
That
understand. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they were that they were funny
Yeah.
and that it was they were meaningful characters um beyond their identity. And so that was good, and I felt like that really, like, okay, we're good, but I also saw that they always need more work.
Yeah.
I wish that wasn't the case,
Well,
but
that's the art of the workshop. I just want to give people a context of your script because I'm gonna read your
okay,
synopsis.
okay.
So see if hopefully I can give it justice. So two strangers meet and sparks fly, but when he accidentally discovers forged paintings at her house, he leaves abruptly. That would be the end of the story, except for the fact that he's reported her to the FBI, and their children are marrying one another on Christmas Day. So a lot of shenanigans in that synopsis.
Yeah,
But tone-wise, if I'm reading that, it could be a Hallmark movie, or from a different tone, it could be like a real serious thriller, I guess, right? With crime thriller, but it's a romance, I guess, right? And it's a whole you want to, but your main genre is a holiday romance. That's what you want to go for, right?
that was that was the intention,
Yeah,
and the intention was to create a holiday movie that wasn't super corny and that had other things, other balls in the air, besides just, people meeting and blah, 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 blah. And so that was the
yeah.
intention. I don't know if I still not sure if I mean, it's a not kind of non-traditional Christmas story.
Yeah.
So it is, I think, what I'm going for.
But in the Hallmark movies, right, the people, the man and the girl, like it's usually someone coming into a stranger coming into a town, right? And then they don't like each other at first, and then of course they do like each other, and then they meet. Where your film, it's like that they meet, they like each other right away, and then outside influences kind of dictate that they have to separate, but of course they realize that their children are marrying each other, right? So
So they are forced to take a road trip across the
yeah,
Southwest together, which from Santa Fe, they start in Santa Fe, which is very much an art community in New Mexico,
yeah.
very beautiful place. And then drive, I think it's 8 or 9, 10 hours to Las Vegas. So, that kind of road trip thing is in there too. But they get stuck in a snowstorm and have to spend the night together in Flagstaff,
Sure.
which is where I live. And and so things get better, you know, for a little bit,
Yeah.
and then things get really bad again. And then they end up in Las Vegas. And one of the things that I changed from the reading is that the Santa Claus who's the officiant for the wedding becomes this is a family therapist. And so the kids are like, we can't have this wedding. This isn't going to work. So we got to call the officiant. And then Santa Claus, the officiant, wants to meet with the family. And so I think that's funny.
Yeah, no, that's
And
crazy. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so they're
But it's
and so
unpredictable too, right? You don't, there's no, it's not predictable.
yes,
Yeah.
and so they're in Vegas and they all have to meet like at the chapel. Santa ends up in the elevator going down to the chapel with both the two main characters who are not speaking to one another. And then Santa kind of does this kind of smart language, what therapists do. Um, and then, one of the kids is like, "You're really good at this. Are you a family therapist in Las Vegas?" He's like, "No, North Pole." you know so he's not giving it up. So I thought that that was a good addition. Another addition, and this came right out of the reading, and it was kind of obvious, but you know how it goes. Was at the end, the main character Vivian, she's an art manager, and so it's her. Jeremy is the artist, and she's been painting um, paintings of his, not as so it's a forgery in part, but it's just to give to his family members because he's so busy, and they're demanding. His mother is making him do it for all his aunties and stuff. And so that's what Jack, the main character who works for the FBI, sees at her house, and he leaves abruptly
Yeah.
because he thinks, and it in this revision, it's that she's actually a notorious this art forger called the Southwest Sister. And so he thinks she's the Southwest Sister, and so he leaves abruptly
Yeah.
after a nice evening rendezvous. And so he's been pursuing the Southwest Sister for several years. And so at the end of the script now, first of all, the aunties come to Las Vegas and find out that he's been giving them forged paintings, and they wallop Jeremy with their purses and stuff, poolside with all these fancy girls in Las Vegas watching that he's been trying to be cool with. And then at the end, Vivian um, has her own gallery. She starts painting her own works, and at the end you think it's another showing of Jeremy's stuff at first because you don't see the
Right.
art, but it turns out that it's her work, and she's there with Jack, and so it ends that way where they've resolved their stuff, but she's also become the painter that she always wanted to be.
So, because she's just doing forged art, so she's kind of selling herself a little bit artistically and kind of morally, I guess, right? So she
Yeah,
has
I
that,
mean
yeah,
it is. I mean it's morally, to grayer because
yeah,
Jeremy's asking her to do it so that he can spend his time on art that they'll sell
yeah.
and make a lot of money. So she's just been an art manager. She had when she was, younger, she was married and had her child, and then her husband left and moved back to Australia. And so she's just been on her own raising this child. And so art management became a way for her to support herself, and she kind of gave up on her dreams.
So, a couple things. Do you, did you research like forged paintings? Like, is this like an industry? I'm assuming.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
especially indigenous paintings.
Oh, okay.
And, so it's all at Southwest, in the Southwest, but also in Canada as well. And but in the Southwest, it's an industry of forgery. And I follow this art detective on Instagram who's like recovered Picassos and that kind of thing, but also bus forgers and stuff. And so there are these art detectives out there doing this kind of work. And you know, Native, I have some good friends that are Navajo artists, and they are routinely exploited one way or the other. So there is kind of a story in there, about, enabling people to kind of reflect a little bit on the kind of exploitation of natives. And here's another way, that but not to hammer people over the head with it. So yeah, I did do the research, and I will tell you that, like, I think it I think it's interesting. I think it may be the weak spot in the script, because I think it's, for example, I had a conversation with a producer about it,
Mhm.
and she said, and I quote, "Well, I'm not an East Coast elite."
Okay.
And
But you live in Arizona, right? So
yeah, me neither. And I'm
that's
not,
what I'm sort of giving that context, but yeah, yeah,
yeah, right, right. And I didn't grow up, fortunately, I didn't grow up wealthy.
yeah.
So to me, art is just something you hang on the wall, and I don't see what the big deal about copy. I don't understand it. So I can't even really talk to you about this because
Gotcha.
I can't help you. No, that's what she's saying to me. I can't help you, because I don't understand what you're doing here. So I don't know if it's just like maybe too kind of I don't know. I think it's a problem for some readers, that I mean, clearly it wasn't for this festival because
Yeah.
I won. So and so there's either people that get it, or they're like, why are you why is this in here? Why is this part
Well,
of the
we know that
story?
everybody has their own personal opinions. I guess in its simplest form, obviously there's an original painting, there's prints, of course, but the painter, the original painter makes money from the prints. But then if you're doing forgery, then that person doesn't get any money from their original painting, I guess, right? So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So that's that's
So
that's that's
that's
shady,
the
right?
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, super shady.
Yeah.
And so that's what the main character Jack thinks she's doing.
Yeah.
He doesn't realize she's doing it for the artist, for his family.
Yeah. But she thinks she is.
She does. She knows she's doing it for his family members. She's annoyed with him, but it's her son's best friend, and it's her biggest client, and she's
Yeah.
a good painter. And he's like, so just do this for me, and and because he's got a huge family, and all of the
Yeah.
family, how that is. You're
Yeah.
famous, and your whole family wants a piece of you.
So no, but in terms of the male character, he like thinks that she's bad, right? Quote unquote.
He thinks she's the Southwest
Yeah,
sister.
exactly.
Yeah.
But then the audience knows that she's not. And but he
Right.
thinks, so we're in on what he doesn't know yet. So then it's like, but he likes her, and it's like, but he's morally sound, right? So yeah.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
leads to,
So
to the conflict in their conversation where she doesn't know that he thinks, you know what I mean? It's like it's good. It's a good like good banter. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I do.
Yeah,
So, but I know that there's a lot of stuff going on. You know, we've
yeah,
got forgery and a road trip and misunderstanding
yeah,
and family and stuff. But I believe that I always want to respect my audience that they can get it. You
yeah.
know, and I don't want to just spoon feed them.
No, I don't think you are. I don't think you are at all. But it's good though because it's like, but also in the end, it's like they each have their own arcs, right? Well, as they romance each other and they get to know each other, that they have their arcs because they want to be the best people that they can be, right? So
For themselves and for their kids
for
who
their kids,
are
yeah,
getting married and they don't know when they meet that their kids, you know, have anything to do with each other because their
yeah,
kids live in LA. And so and then her son asks if she can pick up his soon to be wife's dad because he has an old Mercedes that is converted to electric and it's not working and he's afraid to fly. So because his wife died in an airplane accident. So so she doesn't know she's picking him up. She hasn't seen him since their one night stand, and she picks him up in Albuquerque
yeah.
and pulls into the driveway and sees that it's him. And it's I think it's pretty funny that scene. And then finally they agree to go through with it just because they're for their kids.
Yeah.
To go through with it meaning doing the drive.
So the only I remember like being a little coincidental that their kids are getting married.
What do you mean?
That basically they hook up, right? And then it's like, oh,
Yes.
our kids are getting married.
Right, because he's there because you know, his daughter's
Yeah.
soon to be husband is friends with the artist.
Yeah. So I wanted you to make sure that I was more of a setup that there's a reason why they met. It wasn't just a
Right,
coincidence. Yeah. Yeah.
right. No, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but it just doesn't come out. I mean, you know, and why, and they could talk about that later, you know, with their kids. And she's like, Dad, you reported her to the FBI. And he's like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
why didn't you tell me that it was West's, you
Yeah.
know, best friend, you know, and in Santa Fe? It's like, well, how would that come up, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it
There's a lot
works.
of like, yeah, a lot of shenanigans. Like I said in the beginning, a lot of shenanigans are taking place, which leads to the intent of the audience. They get emotionally involved. They want these all these conflicts to be resolved, I guess, right? All the confusion to be resolved, right?
Yes. And I think that, you know, in Flagstaff, they show up at the gallery where the painting is, the forged painting is at the gallery. And the gallery owner recognizes that it's forged because it's not signed. And and so and that's changed from the reading some too. And the FBI agents come in, and she has told him he has told Vivian, Jack has told Vivian that he's a lawyer dealing with intellectual property, which is kind of what he does do.
Yeah,
And you know, the FBI are like, you know, we're gonna take you in for this, and she's like, well, this is my lawyer, and they're like, ma'am, that's no lawyer, that's an FBI agent, you know. So
yeah,
he's also not even told her what he does for a living. So they, you know, she ends up not getting arrested, but she leaves to go to Las Vegas with the painter Jeremy and his best friend Bobby because they're going to the wedding too. And so, and then Jack drives to Las Vegas alone, but they end up at a gas station where they have a showdown. at the gas station, and all these people gather around and listen to them having it out at the gas station. So it's also embarrassing, because there are all these strangers watching them have this. And that was different than from the table reading too. So there's kind of been a lot of changes. And one of the things I think that I heard from you, though very nuanced and subtle in your polite way, was, there's some inconsistency in tone. And,
Yeah.
or like, what is the tone of this? What is this supposed to
I
be?
think yeah, I remember
And
bringing that up. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And so I tried to work on that
yeah.
as well.
You know why I remember
So,
that? Because it was like you gave me like this confused look, and it was like, oh, okay. And then I felt afterwards, when you have regret, I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I wasn't like confused. I was clocking it.
Okay. But you know, but
I
it's
was
like
like,
that's my perception, right? So it's like we're all insecure. We're all like, you know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
like,
no, I was hearing what you
okay,
were saying, and
yeah,
I was already starting to, the wheels were already turning.
yeah.
I pick up on everything.
Because
So,
you brought up, okay, so like in the Brog interview, you brought up what film have you watched the most times in your life, and you brought up Bringing Up Baby, which is a classic screwball comedy, right? Like from 85 years ago. Isn't that crazy? It's 85 years old, but still
yeah,
works today, right? It still works today,
absolutely.
and it gets ripped off like or borrowed, I guess I could say, in so many films, right? In so many romantic comedies, that film gets stolen. It's like because people don't watch that film, so they can do that. So basically, my point is that I was wondering what the tone what you were looking for? Like, do you want it to be that screwbally because there's a lot of like balls in the air, right? And then, or is it? Do you want it to be? That's why I was always wondering. Or do you want it to be more of a drama where it's like these people are destined to be together, but then we're going to put them together and then we're going to break them up and then the whole journey is to put them back together again, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think I will ever get tired of that trope, of like, this is these two people are supposed to be together,
Yeah.
but the world is just gonna throw everything
Yeah.
at them.
Yeah.
And then what do you got? It like tests their metal, and I mean, I think that's just kind of classic screenwriting for me is like, this is what I want, but I can't get it until I endure all of these hardships and figure out some stuff about myself. They're both have been hurt. They're older, they're not 20. So they've been through some stuff. So they have a lot of
Yeah.
mistrust. And
They're jaded.
and
They're jaded.
they are, and their kids have to, in some ways their kids are smarter than they are, and I think I added more in this latest draft about, well, this isn't my mother, this isn't my father, this is a different person.
Yeah.
They're not going to move to another country. They're not going to die in an airplane accident. And even the gallery owner is like, Jack, do you really? She didn't seem much like a forger to me. Are you
Yeah.
like, do you need some help? you know? So, so there, everybody kind of comes together to help them. They think they're going to help their kids get married, and everybody is actually helping them
Helping
figure
them.
out their own stuff.
So you used the trope about like that, like let's separate them, let's put them back together again, which has obviously been done before. But I think the originality to your script is that, and that's what you're using conventional, storytelling. But what's original about your script is that you don't really see these stories, right? Like you brought up they're in their 50s. First of all, they're in their 50s, and like it's not a 50-year-old man dating a 30-year-old woman, which we see all the time. It's like, or a 20-year-old woman, but basically they're in this, they're the same age, but they've been through some shit, right? And there's distrust. And I think that's an interesting storyline about like because we people go on dating apps and stuff like that, and it's like, but it's easy to hook up, but it's not easy to have a sustainable relationship that's trustworthy, because you know what you have to do when in that relationship. You have to like you have to like get through your shit, right? You have to like be brave. And that's something we don't see often in the movies, right? Because we just see like, oh, they're getting together because they're attractive and they're meant to be together. But this is what the script is about their journey of like of discovering the shit that they have to get through, right? To get together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that
Part of my
that
French, I'm
can
saying the S word. We go, yeah.
part of that is
Yeah.
I think so interesting to me, and but it can also be dealt with humor.
Of
It
course.
could be a whole, you're right, this
Because
whole
it is
thing could be
funny.
a drama,
Yeah.
but these characters are funny. I mean, they're sort of funny, but the characters around them are funny. It's particularly Jeremy the artist and his best
Yeah.
friend Bobby, who's this goth native
Yeah.
guy, so, or a headbanger kind of guy.
And I've discovered like that audiences love characters who fight through their fears. That's a
Absolutely.
Even if they're bad people, like if they fight through their fears, we like the audience likes them.
Yeah, I think so too. So,
So
so
you're onto
yeah, so
something.
we'll see. I hope
Yeah.
so. I'm
You know you are,
trying.
right? So yeah, you know you are, right?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I
Yeah.
am.
So you're busy. But you teach you teach screenwriting, right?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. The beautiful news I have to deliver today is for the next 15 months, I'm on a sabbatical.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I have no teaching, no meetings or anything for 15 months. And they just want me to focus on my screenwriting.
That's amazing.
It is, it is. So, and I get paid, not my full salary, but just 60% of my salary, and all my benefits and everything stays the same. And I saved up money, so that I, don't have to be anxious about money during this time. And so, yeah, it just started like, well, this is kind of the first day of it.
Oh wow.
So
I feel
yeah,
honored.
yeah,
So you're
yeah,
back at work in on September 2026, I guess, right?
yeah, I
Yeah.
am.
That's amazing.
So it is amazing, and I love my job, and I love teaching screenwriting because boy, there's nothing like learning how to do something. Teach, if you're teaching it, and I'm reading scripts all the time,
Yeah.
mostly. Well, I did five. I worked with five undergraduates writing feature length scripts this semester. So I was supervising five of those, and then 20 students writing shorts. First, they wrote a 3 minute, then a 5 minute, then a 15 minute.
Yeah.
And and the 3 minute ones, I worked with a cinematographer professor, and an acting professor and a directing professor, and they got produced
Oh, that's
during the
amazing.
semester, so the kids could, and some of them, like one of them, like won big time in a festival, a student festival
Yeah.
I mean, beat out like the ones that the 15 minute, raised money, da da
Yeah.
da.
That's awesome.
I think it's so great if they can learn how to write a 3 minute script, and take that seriously. You can you can do anything, I
Yeah, you
think,
can. Yeah. Yeah, that's the first day of filmmaking class, or my I went to film school, and the first day the teacher said, you first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a 30-second film, and if you make a bad 30-second film, then you can't make a 1 minute film. Then if you have to make it, so it's like taking the steps. It's like if you can make a great 3 minute film, then that means you can go higher, but you can't make a feature and then first, right? You got to, it's like that, the steps, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. And but it's all there. You
Yeah.
know, it's all there in that 3 minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I mean the stakes, the pressure was on. There were 20 of them. I'd only taught one of them before, and we had to have these scripts done like in the first 2 weeks of the semester. So it was, it was stressful for them, which is for real, because they had to get them
Yeah.
to the next step. So anyway, so I continue this just there. You know me, I've written 3 books, I've published many essays, I've done all that stuff, but this is the thing that I feel like I'm continuously trying to figure out and learning how to do this craft. So I still have much to learn.
Perfect. All right. On that note, I wish you the best of success with this screenplay. And let's obviously don't
Thank
be a
you.
stranger. I'd love to see what's going on. And congrats on the win. And I just hope it reaches the highest potential that it gets.
Thank you. And thank you always for everything. You've been such a big part of my journey. So I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. That means a lot. All right. Let's talk again soon.
Okay.
Thanks.